Hi, and welcome to this month's edition of the Book Club for Young Adults. I'm Kitty Feldy, and this month we are talking about Freedom Beyond the Sea by Waltraud Lewin. Such a great name. And I'm joined by a trio of students from the Chandler School in Pasadena. With me are Caitlin York and Raymond Jimenez and Leanne Wong. Welcome, you guys.
Hi. Hi.
And you're what, 7th and 8th graders? I'm trying to remember who's what.
Yeah, I'm a 8th grader.
8th grader?
Yes, we both are 7th graders.
7th graders, okay. The girls are the 7th and the boy is the 8th grade, the mature voiced amongst us. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book. Who wants to start with what it's about?
Home.
All right,
Start.
You go ahead, Caitlin.
Basically, Freedom Beyond the Sea was about like a young 16-year-old girl, and her name was Esther, and she was running away from the Spanish Inquisition, and she's a Jew, and she's running away from the Spanish Inquisition, which is like basically slaughtering all the Jews and who refuse to convert to Christianity. And she refuses because her father's a rabbi, and yeah, so she's kind of committed. And so she's running away, and since no women are allowed on a ship, she's disguising herself as a boy by the name of Pedro. And she goes on the ship with none other than Christopher Columbus.
Oh, what a coincidence!
And 1492, and she's on the Santa Maria, and throughout the book she establishes a tie between Columbus, and she really becomes emotionally stronger and discovers many things she didn't really know about.
All right, well, Leanne, tell us a little bit about the other characters besides Esther slash Pedro.
There's Christopher Columbus, who is a really great seaman, and he's planning on going to the Indies, but on the way there he has a secret plot within his own self, and he's going to go find the 10 lost tribes of Israel.
Or at least one of the lost
tribes.
Yeah.
And so he has this sort of a strict and soft ways of speaking to Esther, and he's kind of self-centered sometimes, and he's very smart though. And there's Alfonso, which is another ship grummet, and who despises Pedro or Esther at first, and he treats her kind of really mean. In the morning when she's still asleep, he kicks her in the ribs, and that hurts a lot, especially when you're sleeping.
Sounds like you know this from experience.
Yeah, well,
of course.
Yeah, and but later on, when Alfonso wants Esther's help, then he starts becoming easier on her, and because he wants her to still help him, and yeah, and then there's Garcia, the cook of the ship, who is very protective of Pedro or Esther, and whenever the other crew members gang up on her, Garcia helps her out. And there's one more character which also helped out Esther, which is Diego, who helped her throughout her seasickness and comfort her through times and stuff. Yeah.
Also the interpreter.
Oh yeah, and the interpreter. Yeah, that guy.
There are a lot of characters. I have to say, I have a hard time keeping track of a lot of the characters in there.
Promised and everything.
And then there was Gutierrez and Sanchez, those two nobles of the ship, and the interpreter, who was pretended to interpret, but
really wasn't.
Started to,
Raymond, the title is Freedom Beyond the Sea. It's pretty self-evident what that means. Does it have any other meanings, do you think?
Well, I think it was, there's a quote in the book that says that. I think it was quoted from the Old Testament somewhere. And yeah, it basically says that if you go beyond the sea, you'll have freedom and be free of religious persecution and all that, like the Spanish Inquisition.
Well, let's hear a little bit from the book for people who didn't get a chance to read it. This is a selection from the book where Esther / Pedro is trying to tell us, the reader, how she thinks she's going to get away with fooling the entire crew that she's a boy. And we'll ask Adriana Anderson to read a little bit from the book.
As long as no one gets the idea I should undress, I can easily conceal this. I'm much too thin for my 16 years, and I have boy hips and so little bosom that it can be hidden without any trouble under a big shirt. What I've been through in recent months has made me even more gaunt. My long face, with its thick eyebrows and large nose, has grown hollow-cheeked. I look like any other of the half-starved street boys in Paulo's or Maguire. They also have short, curly black hair like mine, brown skin, and dark eyes. This is how pure-blooded Castilians look. As a girl, I'm a homely thing. As a boy, I might just get away with it. Anyhow, my body won't betray me. My hands and feet, yes, they are treacherous. My gestures, my speech. So I talk very little and keep to myself.
So thanks, Adriana. Another person who goes to the Chandler School. This book was, and I guess I didn't realize it until the second time I read it, that this was a translation. This wasn't a book written in English.
Yeah, it was, I think it was written 1997 or maybe before that, and then it was translated in this edition 2000, I think.
But originally written not in Spanish, but written in German.
German, yeah, because the author, Walter Lewin, is
Yeah, that was a kind
Germany,
of surprising
from
thought.
Berlin.
What is it, Raymond?
It was a surprising thought. It didn't even occur to me that it might be translated.
Could you tell in the writing, though? That was my question.
I wasn't really sure because I don't look for things like,
Context.
yeah,
Yeah.
context and how it's translated. I don't really look for things like that when I'm reading a book.
Was this book different than other young adult novels that you've read?
Yeah,
Leanne?
very.
Why? How?
Because you don't actually have a fiction novel that includes historic members and actually go inside their characters. Well, they do have some, but this one's more deep and it's in a different perspective where you're on a ship and you're surrounded by seamen who are all very hard on each other. They're scared out of their pants. and there's a lot of scheming going around everywhere. So you have to be careful who you trust and everybody and stuff like that.
But there's also the book, The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle,
Oh,
is
yes.
another book by Abby, and it's very similar. I found many similarities between the two. It's about a girl who's going on a voyage. But hers is from the England to Rhode Island, so that's another sea
and
route.
it takes place 200 years later.
Yes.
Yeah. But
That's
still.
a key factor.
Yeah, well, there is that. Yeah, a little thing like that. But I mean, the thing is, though, it's the same basic premise that you've got a girl dressing up like a boy, which actually you're going to find as you guys start reading other literature shows up all the time. Shakespeare kept doing it every time you turned around. He thought it was a great idea.
Because like women weren't valued really. They're necessarily in that time.
But it's also a good joke. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
been guys like to dress up like girls, and
Yeah.
girls, you know, it's kind of a
That's
funny
funnier.
gender. Yeah, it is funny when boys dress up like girls. Movies
From
have it all the time.
perspective.
Yeah. But getting back to the idea of how you could tell, this is a story that, I mean, we all learned in grammar school. Christopher Columbus, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Used in math concepts a lot.
Yeah. So here we've got a story that we think we know pretty well. Did you find it interesting told from a different point of view? Again, you've got a European telling this tale with a lot more emphasis on what was going on in Spain at the time, rather than, because I certainly don't remember that part of the story when I was learning about Columbus.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was different because usually you just learn that Christopher Columbus made all these voyages over to the across the Pacific, and that was it. You don't learn anything about his character or what he was thinking, really.
Yeah.
He's just there as a name to remember.
Yeah, from a different perspective, it's very intriguing, I guess you could say.
There were also some mature stuff in this book. I thought it was a little subtle, but all right, well, you guys picked it up. I just wanted to make sure. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it was one of those books I thought, oh, I don't know if we should do it or
It
not.
was geared for 14 and up, I found out. And
So I've
as
totally
we're
corrupted you guys. I'm sorry.
It wasn't all that strong. It was so
but
subtle.
it was very...
Leanne, what?
Well, I kind of thought it was a tad bit inappropriate because when I was reading it, I go, what's this? I'm like, I shouldn't be even, it's like, I don't usually read books in this nature. So then I skim it during that part, and I moved on. I was like, what is that stuff doing in there?
Well, now I'm feeling really bad here.
Sorry, no.
It was very,
but it's a good experience to learn, because later on in like life, you'll be having to read books that have more mature issues than this.
Well, we should say it's not graphic. It's
Yeah,
not graphic
yeah.
sex, but there's a lot of, Christopher Columbus she discovers that he's Jewish, and the way she discovers he's Jewish is because he's circumcised, so she has to see his penis. So that's they don't say that in the book, but that's what happens.
Also,
Back then.
then it also says that like this is not our night and stuff, and it's just kind of referring, but it's kind of getting away from that idea, so it wouldn't be as graphic, as you say.
But on the other hand, there's her age. She's 16, and you can tell that she's sort of falling in love with Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah. If I was in her situation, I don't know. I think that we're different in that case, because I don't think I would have. I don't like Christopher Columbus. I don't
Tell me why.
like his
Tell me all the
character.
reasons. Yeah.
I just think that he's a little, like Leanne said, self-centered, and that that he just cares about his position, and he doesn't really care about necessarily protecting Esther, / Pedro, because Esther is cries out for help to him countless times, and he just kind of declines it because he's worried that he'll lose his position with outbursts from the crew, and then at the end he kind of protects her, by getting her away from the being beaten, but
you don't like him very much. It doesn't sound like. Raymond, what about you?
I thought he was an okay character. I could get to know live with him. He wouldn't be all that bad. It's just that when he's really, really involved with something, he wants to finish it, like his voyage to the Indies. He really wanted to get there without any interference from the royal court or the Spanish Inquisition.
So he was under a lot of pressure too, and you were more willing to forgive him than I think either of the girls were.
Yeah.
Well,
Interesting character.
Leanne? As I said before, he was very self-centered, and he didn't care what other people he cared what other people thought, but he didn't necessarily care what Esther thought. He said, "Well, he probably thinks that, oh, she's some ship person. They probably won't tell her, she's not important." And at the end, she says in her head, "Will he remember me?" And I doubt that very much.
Yeah, I agree.
That he does, because he's basically all about himself, and that's a fact.
He also did say in a letter that he wrote to the governess of whatever, the Canary Islands, he did write that for various reasons this girl's very dear to me, and so I think he would remember her and never forget the experience that they had on the ship, because I don't know, it's just a rare experience during that time, because usually women weren't, like I said, valued, and it was that kind of period. So.
Well, I like that idea of talking about, especially famous people, about where your values are, where your energy has to be, what you count as important. And again, I'm going to come back to you, Raymond, because you were much more forgiving of him. Talk a little bit about, because he was, he was the man who sailed to the unknown, trying to discover something out there. So he had to have a lot of self-confidence, I guess you'd think, to be able to take a journey like that.
Well, Columbus said himself that there were people who went before him, the Vikings and other European explorers, so he kind of had a map. It was really just the fact that the uneducated people didn't know that. They still think that the world was flat, so some of the sailors and the other seamen might have been scared going over, and so it wasn't really all that bad, but he had to stand up to a lot of pressure in order to get over there in the first place.
I'm wanting to think about other famous people who you think perhaps could be nicer. you know, people who think perhaps more about their public persona than other people, I guess. Leanne?
Well, I kind of think as a famous person that doesn't care about what other people sort of think would probably be, well, actually I think probably every famous person is probably aware of what other people think. Otherwise, they wouldn't be famous, because famous people are what the public likes, and whatever the public likes is what the famous people like, and it's just like a circle that keeps on going on and on, that are famous people.
Yeah, Caitlin, you look like you're disagreeing.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I thought he was more, Columbus at this time was actually more valued than famous. I think he was more like, Esther like agreed with him. She like kind of thought of him as an idol, I guess. I think that he was more like, I can't really think of the word, but like, appreciated almost.
By whom?
By like admired, yeah, and like by those who agreed with his ideas, because he was admirable, and
so he had leadership qualities.
yeah, he was well educated, and that kind of is the main idea, because otherwise he couldn't get to where he was then.
But again, you guys, it's so interesting because the two of you who've been very critical of him, now you're sitting around praising him to the skies here.
Well, actually, I think everybody thought, like, all I know is pretty much that the King of Portuguese, the person that he went first to get ships and money and supplies to go to the Indies, thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know? And I think after he came back, everyone thought he was crazy. And although he was a ship captain and a great seaman, I think girls also were head over heels for him, but I think they still thought he was crazy.
There was always that chance that maybe he wasn't, and he'd come back really rich and be really famous.
I think that he was very well educated, and he made some very smart decisions, but I didn't really agree with his personality. I didn't find him very, like,
you wouldn't hang out with him. You wouldn't have a crush on him, in other words.
No.
Okay. And I got a no from you either, right?
Well, no, but you know, I think Esther kind of fell in love with him because she was 16. She was running away from the Spanish Inquisition, and she had no time to think about relationships, love, and all that stuff. And so I think finally when she got on the ship and she's surrounded by men, and she just happens to be a page for Christopher Columbus, who she spends most of her time with, she, like, as set up marriages, you grow to love the person.
Or was it more that she missed her father? That was my other thought.
Yeah.
Well,
She kind of thought, I guess it was, because she ran away and her family got tortured by the Inquisition and died because of that. She would be desperate for pretty much any emotional contact. Maybe she saw her father, maybe she saw somebody else, but I think Christopher Columbus would be a pretty likable guy if you were in that situation too.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think she's like saw.
She's what?
I think she Columbus reminded her of her father, and that therefore she became more interested in his ideas, and it went from there, I guess.
Let's talk about how much freedom a writer has to play with history and historic characters. Have you guys ever done any writing in school where you've taken? You have?
Yeah.
What have you done?
Well,
Raymond, you start.
Let's see here. I've changed history a couple of times by writing self-insertion.
Anything I should worry about here?
No.
Okay.
I just like.
What'd you do?
Maybe I just inserted myself a couple of times back there. Maybe, like, if it would have been nice if I was a frontiersman on the out in the New World, looking for adventure and everything, and gold and money, and would have been pretty interesting if I were back there.
So you put yourself as a character in a historic context. Did you introduce real-life historic characters in the story?
I don't think I did. I think I forgot to do that, but Because when you're a frontiersman, no one's out there with you
Well,
anyway.
that's true. Not a lot of famous people out on the prairie.
Yeah. Well, there's Daniel Boone.
Well, there is. Depends on what part of the prairie. Big prairie.
It's like a little bit.
What did you write, Caitlin?
Well, I've like written, I don't know, it depends on what I feel up to, I guess. It, like what I'm learning about in school, and sometimes like it comes up to my mom's from Massachusetts, so whenever we have like a Massachusetts writing assignment, I always go to like my mom's past stories, or sometimes I go to the Salem witch trials.
Oh, sure.
I had an ancestor involved in that, and I just kind of write about
Wait,
her.
wait, stop, come back. You have an ancestor involved in the Salem witch trials? Got burnt or burnt other people?
Got accused.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so sometimes I write about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you read, is it Celia Reese's book called Sorceress?
Sorceress. I've heard of it. I was really
It's a
interested.
good one
I
on
was
that
gonna read
topic.
it.
Yeah. She's got 2 that's out.
Yeah, there's like this.
Oh, the witch
Yeah,
child?
the
Is that it?
no.
No, but the Witch
It's
Child's
the
another one that's
The Witch
in the
Child's
same
another one.
era.
And then there's
Yeah.
the Witch of Blackbird Pond.
Witch of Blackbird Pond, yeah.
I have that.
I read that a long time ago.
Yeah.
How does that one stand up? Is it kind of old-fashioned when you read it now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't really remember, but I think it's like just like on a ship or something. I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, getting back to, there's this style in nonfiction of taking serious topics and
Altering them.
well, just kind of, yeah, they do alternative universe kinds of things. But I was thinking there was a biography of Ronald Reagan that was written a few years ago called Dutch. And there was a big controversy because the writer wanted to be able to tell stories that there was nobody there to tell. So he created an imaginary character inside the biography to try to tell the stories. Now, when you got fiction, pretty much you have a license to create imaginary things. But again, Leanne, I'm going to come back to you. How much freedom do you think a writer should have to write imaginary stories, because this is purely an imaginary story, using real life characters? Because this writer imagined a whole lot of things about Christopher Columbus that we don't know are true or not.
Oh, well, there will always be a limit to what you can write, because there's only so much you can know about a person, and there's a limit that you have to go to, because you read in textbooks, you read in history textbooks, there are certain personalities, there's certain traits, things that they were good at and things that they were interested in. And if you took a fiction book and you totally turned everything upside down, it would be totally against what you read and learned, and you'd be questioning yourself, is this right or is this right? And so there will always be a certain limit to what you can
how do you
write.
determine that limit, though?
Well, you determine that limit by what you think is right, like using your ethical perspectives to think about what is right or wrong, or the correct thing to do, or what's not correct to do, and yeah.
So it's up to the individual writer, you think?
Yeah. And then afterwards, it's up to the editor and the critics to
See if you're
enjoy
right or
it.
not.
Yeah.
Do you agree? I see you nodding over there, Caitlin.
Yeah. Some, like she said, like some history books give opinions on what they think happened during history, and their opinions of maybe what kind of character Columbus was, what kind of acts he made, and what decisions he cited, and things like that. And I think.
Well, you've done a lot of reading, Raymond. For example, and I bet your history books that you read were real different than the ones I read. How is Christopher Columbus portrayed in the history books you've read?
Well, we just got done with our history lesson of Christopher Columbus, and we read the textbook, and it presented him in a typical good guy fashion, and how everybody knew it took 3 months. But our history teacher went on a totally different tangent then. She looked up all the different information that was available now instead of when the textbook was written.
Oh.
So it turns out that there was a bunch of stuff about Christopher Columbus that was actually fake. It's like 90% myth and 10% truth.
Really? So what do we know that is true?
He actually had good weather when he was sailing over there. There was no mutiny, and I think what it was that nobody on the ship thought he was crazy. They just disagreed with his course.
Oh, they thought he was going the wrong way.
Yeah, the sailors were.
Course in the book, like the secret sea chart.
Huh. And what about, but a lot of times, when I was growing up, there was a holiday, there was Columbus Day, and now often it's referred to as Indigenous Peoples Day, because we forget, you know, when Europeans arrived on North America, the Native Americans got the short end of the stick, shall we say. So I'm just curious, how was that presented? How was that side of the story presented?
It's pretty much, because it's a textbook, it's kind of dull and factual. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Once Christopher Columbus came over, there was all the sickness, and they could never get back to how they used to be.
Yeah. When we think about who's the modern Christopher Columbus, I don't know. I was thinking about the
director.
What were you thinking about?
Oh, I was just thinking about the director, like the Harry Potter, Chris Columbus.
Oh, the director, Christopher Columbus. No, I meant the guy who sailed the ship to America.
Yeah.
I mean, who would that be today? I was thinking about the guys who competed for the X Prize, perhaps.
Yeah.
But who else? Is there anybody else you can think of?
It could be the guys from JPL who are doing interplanetary space exploration and everything.
Yeah, instead of the world exploration sport.
I got to go there. I have to tell you, I got to go to JPL and go see both the crew for the Mars rover and for the Venus.
Did you
The flyby. Yes, we did a whole hour show. It was so interesting to just sort of hang out and see their toys and tools. And you know, they have such interesting posters on their wall, cartoons, all the space cartoons they have, and toys and plants that grow across the whole wall that's there. So anyway, hey, you guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
very, very fun.
Very interesting.
Good. Well, our three members from the Chandler School, Raymond Jimenez, Caitlin York, and Leanne Wong. Again, the book that we're reading this month, in case you want to pick it up at the library or your bookstore, it's Freedom Beyond the Sea by, because I can never remember the woman's name. I assume it's a woman. Waldtraut Lewin. All right. Join us again next month for another conversation about next month's book right here on the Book Club of the Year for Young Adults. I'm Kitty Feldy. Thanks a lot for joining.